You're fired.
At 78 years old, Arnold Schwarzenegger has lived through more lifetimes than most could ever imagine. From a small Austrian village to the pinnacle of bodybuilding, from dominating Hollywood blockbusters to leading one of the largest states in America, his life has been a sequence of battles won against impossible odds. Yet, what happened to him recently struck fans differently. It wasn't about records, trophies, or power. It was something far more personal, something that touched millions on a deeper level. When people think of Arnold, they think of strength. They picture the iron discipline of his training days, the unstoppable force of his movie characters, the sheer willpower that carried him through politics and personal trials. But time has a way of challenging even the strongest among us. And as Arnold stepped into his 78th year, the question that lingered wasn't whether he was still a star. It was how long even a legend could keep fighting against the march of time. The world expected him to slow down, to fade quietly into the background of Hollywood history. Instead, he did something that no one anticipated. He reminded everyone that while age changes the body, it doesn't have to break the spirit. And in doing so, he revealed a side of himself that was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Because what truly happened to Arnold at 78 wasn't just a story about survival. It was about resilience, family, legacy, and the emotional weight of being human in front of millions of eyes. Transition tease, and it all began with a birthday celebration that proved Arnold Schwarzenegger was still unwilling to surrender. On July 30th, 2025, Arnold Schwarzenegger turned 78. For many, it would be a quiet occasion, marked with a cake, a toast, and a well-deserved rest. But Arnold has never lived life the way most people do. Instead of slowing down, he began the day in the place that has defined him for decades, the gym. Early in the morning, long before the sun had burned away the Los Angeles haze, he was already lifting. Not the heaviest weights of his past, but enough to remind himself and the world that discipline does not retire. For Arnold, a birthday isn't an excuse to pause. It's a reminder to keep going, to stay in motion, to resist the creeping comfort of complacency. Later that same morning, he was seen pedaling through the streets on his bike. It wasn't for show. This has become a ritual, part of his daily rhythm. Helmet on, eyes forward, legs pushing against resistance. He moved through the city as though he were still training for a scene, still proving that time may change the body, but it doesn't have to steal the spirit. Onlookers couldn't help but snap photos and video. To them, it was surreal. A man nearly 80, once the most famous action star on the planet, still powering forward as if age were just a number. That evening, he posted a message to his millions of fans. It wasn't promotional. It wasn't political. It was heartfelt gratitude. He thanked those who had supported him across every stage of his life, through bodybuilding, through Hollywood, through politics, and through his quieter, more personal battles. He wrote not as a celebrity, but as a man who understood that 78 years is a gift, and every day is a chance to keep writing the story. The birthday became more than a celebration. It was a declaration. Arnold wasn't asking for sympathy or applause. He was showing his fans that resilience is built in the small choices. Every rep, every ride, every morning when you choose to move instead of rest. For millions watching online, it was a lesson. Strength doesn't end when you grow old. It transforms into something deep. But behind the confidence, there was more. Because even though he spent the day in motion, projecting the same unstoppable spirit that made him a legend, life was about to remind him that not every battle could be won with iron discipline alone. Transition tease. Because what came next would shake his career in a way no workout could prepare him for. While others his age are settling into retirement homes, Arnold continues to live under the bright lights of film sets. His 78th year didn't slow him down. In fact, it kept him busier than anyone expected. Only weeks after his birthday, he was back on set filming the second season of Fubar, the Netflix action comedy series that had introduced him to a whole new generation of viewers. For Arnold, It wasn't just about proving he could still play the part. It was about showing that discipline and passion don't expire with age. Colleagues on set described him as relentless. He arrived early, checked every detail, and carried himself with the same intensity that once made directors call him a one-man army. But now, his energy had shifted. He wasn't just the star, he was also a mentor. Crew members spoke about how he took the time to learn their names, share stories, and give advice to younger actors who had grown up watching his movies. Between filming days, he didn't disappear into a trailer or demand space. Instead, he used downtime to rehearse, stretch, and keep moving. The workouts weren't as heavy as in his younger days, but the consistency was the same. Discipline beats motivation, he has said countless times, and those around him could see it in action. For Arnold, showing up day after day was the real victory. And it wasn't only FUBAR that kept him working. He also signed on to star in a holiday movie titled The Man with the Bag, set for release in October 20. A festive film might have seemed like a strange choice for a man known for machine guns and catchphrases. But for Arnold, it was about range and legacy. He wanted to entertain families, to prove he could still surprise his audience. On set, younger actors often whispered that they couldn't believe the man from the Terminator was still out here, filming scenes alongside them. Some even admitted to feeling nervous, knowing they were sharing the screen with a living legend. Arnold, however, brushed aside their awe with humor. He told them that nerves are wasted energy, that the only thing that matters is the work. To the outside world, his late 70s career looked like a miracle. To Arnold, it was simple. Keep working, keep showing up, and never let the years dictate the script. For the fans, it was inspiring to see. But for Arnold himself, the stage was about to shift in a way no one anticipated. Transition tease, because just as the cameras stopped rolling, news broke that would send shockwaves through his career. The birthday celebrations had barely faded when reality delivered a blow that no one saw coming. Just days after Arnold marked 78 years of life and strength, Netflix announced the cancellation of FUBAR. The timing stunned fans. A series that had only recently wrapped its second season, headlined by one of Hollywood's most enduring icons, was suddenly gone. For viewers, it felt abrupt. Social media filled with frustration and disbelief. Why would a show with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the center be cut down so quickly? Many speculated about streaming politics, budgets, or shifting strategies. But to the millions who had tuned in, none of that mattered. What mattered was the loss of seeing their hero still commanding the screen with the same charisma that once carried blockbuster after blockbuster. For Arnold, the news carried a heavier weight. Acting was never just about lights and cameras. It was the craft that allowed him to reinvent himself after bodybuilding, to prove that he could dominate a world far removed from the gym. When a role ended, it wasn't just a paycheck lost. It was another chance to connect with audiences slipping away. He handled the announcement with the same stoicism he had shown throughout his career. There was no angry outburst. Nope, he simply moved forward, projecting calm to the outside world. But those close to him could see the sting. At 78, opportunities like FUBAR don't come often. This was supposed to be another chapter in his late career revival, a chance to prove that his name still carried power in the era of streaming giants. Instead, it became a reminder that even legends are not immune to Hollywood's ruthless calculations. What made it even more difficult was the contrast. Days earlier, he had been celebrated worldwide for his energy, his resilience, his refusal to slow down. Now, the same industry he had given decades of his life to had quietly closed the door on one of his biggest projects in years. The high of his birthday collided with the low of professional rejection, and the emotional swing was impossible to ignore. Still, Arnold is no stranger to setbacks. His career has been a roller coaster, with towering highs and humbling lows. For every global hit like Terminator 2, there was a stumble like Last Action Hero. For every box office triumph, there were critics who doubted him. And each time, he refused to fold. Instead, he turned obstacles into fuel, reshaping his career again and again. The cancellation of FUBAR was different, though. This wasn't about critics or box office numbers. This was about time, about the reality that at 78, the industry might see him less as a leading man and more as a name from the past. It wasn't a matter of ability. He was still working, still training, still showing up. But Hollywood has always been driven by what's next, not what's lasting. And that reality hit harder than most fans realize. Yet, if history has proven anything, it's that Arnold doesn't stay down for long. Every disappointment has been followed by reinvention. And though Fubar ended, the man at its center has always found a way to turn endings into beginnings. Transition tease. And while Hollywood tested his resilience, something far more personal was happening at home. Something that would remind him where his true legacy really lives. Beyond the cameras and headlines, Arnold's most meaningful role has always been fatherhood. At 78, he has achieved almost everything a man could dream of. Titles, fame, power. But nothing compares to the pride he carries for his children. And in recent years, one story in particular has revealed a softer, more personal side of the man the world once knew as the Terminator. His youngest son, Christopher, had struggled with his weight throughout his youth. For Arnold, who built his entire identity on discipline and fitness, it could have been a point of conflict. But instead of criticism, he and Maria Shriver chose a different approach. They never labeled him, never used words that would cut deep. They built a home where healthy choices were encouraged, where small habits mattered more than harsh judgment. The turning point came years earlier during a family trip to Australia. Christopher had planned to skydive with friends, but was turned away because of his weight. It was a private moment, one that didn't make headlines, but it planted a seed. Slowly, he began taking charge of his health, not because of pressure from his famous father, but because of a decision to reclaim control for himself. By 2025, Christopher had shed over 30 pounds. It wasn't through shortcuts or quick fixes, but through persistence and dedication. And when Arnold spoke publicly about it, his voice carried an unmistakable pride. He didn't boast about genetics or training methods. He praised his son's willpower, his self-motivation, and his refusal to quit. For fans, hearing Arnold speak like this was different. They were used to the confident, larger-than-life figure who conquered gyms and box offices. But here was Arnold humbled, emotional, and deeply moved by the growth of his son. It reminded the world that behind the persona of a global superstar stood a father who measured his true success not in trophies but in the lives of his children. Christopher's story became a mirror for Arnold himself. Just as his son had faced obstacles and found a way forward, Arnold too was navigating his own season of change. Watching Christopher transform was more than a moment of parental pride. It was a less strength, Arnold realized, is not always about lifting the heaviest weight or starring in the biggest film. Sometimes it's about inspiring others to rise on their own terms. At 78, he could look at his son and see proof that legacy isn't only written in movie scripts or political offices. Legacy lives in family, in resilience passed down, and in the victories that no one else sees but mean everything. Transition tease. But even as his family gave him reasons to celebrate, Arnold himself was facing a far greater question, the one that comes for all of us, eventually. How do you measure a life when time itself begins to close in? At 78, Arnold Schwarzenegger still projects the same energy that defined his decades-long career. But even the strongest figures cannot escape the quiet truth that time has its own way of testing us. The weights feel heavier than they once did. The recovery takes longer. The face that once symbolized unshakable power now carries the marks of experience, each line carved by years of victories and struggles. For Arnold, this stage of life isn't about denial. It's about reckoning. Throughout his journey, he has fought against limitations. When people in Austria laughed at his dream of becoming a bodybuilder, he proved them wrong. When Hollywood executives told him his accent and name were too strange for stardom, he rewrote the rules of what a leading man could look and sound like. When politicians dismissed him as an actor dabbling in public service, he won the governorship of California. Over and over, Arnold turned impossibility into reality. But age is a different kind of opponent. It cannot be defeated through sheer willpower or another marathon training session. Instead, it forces even the most disciplined among us to ask, what remains when the spotlight dims? What do we leave behind when we can no longer do what once defined us? For Arnold, the answer lies not only in films, politics, or championships. His legacy is layered. He is remembered as the man who inspired generations to pick up weights and build stronger bodies, as the hero of films that shaped global pop culture, as the politician who tried to bridge divides in turbulent times. Yet, as he often says himself, true legacy isn't about trophies, it's about impact, the ideas, values, and discipline that live on in others. And this is where Arnold's story at 78 takes on its most human dimension. He is still biking every morning, still training, still appearing on sets when projects call, but he no longer measures success by how heavy he can lift or how many millions a movie earns. Instead, he finds meaning in seeing his children succeed, in mentoring younger generations, and in reminding his fans that consistency is more powerful than fleeting motivation. This realization does not come without struggle. Every time a role slips away or a project ends abruptly, the reminder is clear: even legends cannot outrun time. But rather than resisting this truth, Arnold has begun to embrace. His message has shifted from be the strongest to be the most consistent, from dominate the world to inspire the next. In this evolution, his fans see not weakness, but wisdom. The paradox of Arnold at 78 is this: the limits that time imposes have only made his legacy stronger, because it shows the world that strength is not measured only in youth or in peak performance. Strength is in the ability to adapt, to endure, and to pass on what you've learned. By showing vulnerability alongside discipline, he has become more relatable than ever before. When fans see him riding his bike or hear him reflecting on life, they don't just see the action hero of the past. They see a man who continues to fight, not against villains or machines, but against the universal challenge of aging with dignity. And in that battle, Arnold is proving once again that true strength isn't about defeating every obstacle. It's about meeting life's limits head-on and still choosing to move forward. Transition tease. And that's why, when you look at what truly happened to Arnold at 78, the story ends not in tragedy, but in something far more powerful. At 78, Arnold Schwarzenegger stands as proof that a life defined by strength can evolve into something far greater. His birthday showed us a man who refuses to stop moving. His projects on set reminded us that passion doesn't fade with age. The cancellation of Fubar revealed that even legends face setbacks. And his son's transformation highlighted the legacy that matters most, the one built within family. The truth is, Arnold's greatest battle has never been against villains on screen or critics in Hollywood. It's been against time itself. And while time has claimed some of his speed, his power, and his roles, it has not taken away his spirit. That is the lesson millions of fans see in him now. Because what really happened to Arnold at 78 wasn't a fall. It wasn't defeat. It was the unveiling of a new chapter. One where his influence is measured not in box office numbers, but in the lives he inspires. And maybe that's the part that makes people emotional. The realization that the strongest man of his generation is still teaching us what real strength looks like. Not unshakable muscle, not endless youth, but resilience, humility, and the courage to keep going. Arnold has faced many battles. At 78, he's still showing the world that the fight is never really over. It just changes shape, and that's why his story is far from finished. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs motivation today, and subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood legends.